Hey, halt die Klappe und hock dich hin, glatzköpfiges Arschloch!
What's going on YouTube? Randomly doing too many videos on too many different things to keep track of boy here. What am I doing in Prague? The other day I was doing videos in the house on Fusion 360 and Inventor. What's going on? Right, well there's a story to that. Quite a while ago I learned of the existence of a new VR headset that was in development, and you know I loves me some VR. I've had a Vive since day one and I absolutely adore VR. The problem is the Vive just couldn't cut it in business. The resolution wasn't good enough and it just wasn't a thing. It was great, but it wasn't really enough to work with in terms of screen resolution. Reading text was a chore, so it just didn't quite cut the mustard. So then I learned of the existence of this new 5K OLED screened headset that was in development in a company called Vrgineers based in Prague. So I got in touch with them and I was like, mate, what is it? What? Where did you guys come from? What is this you're working on? Because I tell you what, if Samsung was working on this thing, it would be all over the news. If HTC was working on this, it would be all over the front pages. So they were like, well mate, why don't you come out over to Prague and we'll show you what we're doing. We'll train you up on how to use it. We'll show you the range of applications that it works with, what we're doing, what we're all about. And then you can take that back and apply it to whatever you want in your line of work. And I was like, you want to send me to Prague? Deal. All right then, let's do it. And here I am, we're in Prague. So I'm going to be heading out over to the Vrgineers office in Prague tomorrow to see what they're all about. I have absolutely no idea what to expect at this point, so I'm just going to turn up, see what they're doing, see what they're all about, and I'll take it from there. I'm not entirely sure if I'm allowed to film or how much I can film whilst I'm in there. I only have a GoPro with me. That's about it, because Ryanair. So I'll see what I can do with this, but we'll see how this video pans out. I'm not too sure what to expect yet, but it's going to be an exciting couple of days.
Well, as this is my first ever attempt at trying to do a bit of journalism, one thing I've learned super fast, mate, is that I suck hard at journalism. It's really not something that I excel at. It's not my speciality. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I didn't expect to be let down quite so badly by my top-of-the-line 4K GoPro Hero 6, which failed to work on almost every level. One job that thing had, just one job. I should have just used my Note 8 camera and should have hit record the moment I walked through the doors to capture the barrage of invaluable information that was discussed. But you live and learn, mate, you live and learn. Indeed, journalism isn't something I've quite mastered yet. Never mind. Let's start off by looking up close and personal with the star of the show, the XTAL, a VR headset itself. So if your first concern is surrounding the aesthetics of the headset, mate, there's no need to be concerned there. I'm not, and they're certainly not. Looks are always going to be subjective, and I happen to quite like the fighter pilot inspired gunship helmet visor look that they've got going on here. No VR headset's going to ever please everyone, but the bottom line here being that the looks of it are quite literally the least important factor to this product and its development. But personally, I'm alright with it. I quite like it. After all, XTAL is an informal abbreviation for crystals. Possibly an element of that is in the looks, but also a nod to the crystal clear clarity of vision that comes with the unit. And before I get into specs and whatnot, let's just get this out the way first so there's no misunderstandings here, mate. This is not for gamers. Can you game on it? Yeah. It's built around the OpenVR standard and it's fully integrated into Steam VR. But at no point, not ever, not a single occasion throughout the entire day together was gaming ever mentioned or discussed. This is not being developed with gaming in mind. It's not being optimized for gaming. This is 100% designed by engineering professionals for use by engineering professionals. And let me also drive this point home as well, mate. The XTAL, this is no pipe dream. This isn't a prototype. This is actually being used in production by some of the biggest players in the automotive game. The client list is phenomenally impressive. And by client list, they don't mean, oh, you know, we once had an email reply from an intern saying that they like the look of it and it looked promising. No, the XTAL is physically in use right now inside of, for example, BMW, Audi, Skoda, Volkswagen, GM, assisting all of those guys with the design validation, evaluation and R&D. But not only that, it's broken into the aerospace industry for both commercial and military applications, elevating maintenance guidance, flight simulation experience and training, all to an entirely new level. And the beating heart of the XTAL is what differentiates it from the mainstream VR solutions that we've currently got on the shelves: the two high-density OLED displays with patented custom-built optics. And those are the all-important non-Fresnel proprietary lenses hovering over two 2560 by 1440 OLED displays, delivering over, check this out, 7.3 million pixels of colour-rich crystal clarity to your VR experience. Something which is, quite frankly, tangibly lacking right now with the Vive and the Rift, who by comparison, the regular first-generation HTC Vive and Oculus Rift, those have both got a 1080 by 1200 resolution per eye display, equaling 2.6 million total pixels. And then the new, recently refreshed Vive Pro has two 1440 by 1600 resolution displays, pushing a total of 4.6 million pixels. So just to put that into perspective, mate, the full combined resolution of the Vive Pro is 2880 by 1600, whereas the XTAL is 5120 by 1440, a full 2.7 million pixels more. That incredible native resolution removes any need for, quite frankly, unacceptably annoying required software level supersampling or upscaling that you've got to do in the Vive and the Rift to achieve any kind of acceptable image quality. And not only does the XTAL boast far superior native resolution, which, let's be honest, almost immediately on its own resolves the main issue most people have got with mainstream VR headsets, but it's also got a far wider field of view, that being 170 degrees, up from the 110 degrees possible in all variants of the Vive and the Rift. And there's no two ways about it, mate. VR is all about immersion. That's pretty much the end goal, so a hugely increased peripheral vision to the point whereby there's practically no blind spots is another massive win for the XTAL. A few more fairly important points of note: the XTAL is designed to work with people who wear glasses, which in business is something that you can't really compromise on, so they've made allowances for that. It's got genuine leather face cushion on it, which is definitely a bonus for those of us used to that spongy foam padding that you get on the Vive that rests against your face. Because the XTAL is intended for use in an office, it'll be used on the regular by multiple people over the course of a day, so it's great that they've thought about ease of cleaning or wiping down by choosing leather. It's infinitely easier to wipe down and clean a leather surface than it is to clean the absorbent sponge that you got on the other headsets. And Vrgineers have also developed and delivered the world's first automatic eye alignment system that they've called Auto Eye. Again, another essentially important function when you're switching the use between different people on a regular basis. And that's about it. So it's not. This product is delivering even more bar-raising tech. The XTAL has an embedded leap motion hand tracking sensor, which lets you see your actual own hands in VR. And trust me, as someone who's used to seeing the Vive controllers for hands, this was properly trippy, but it worked flawlessly during the demo. And obviously, you can't see your actual hands, but it's a digitally rendered representation of your actual hands and fingers and knuckles. They're all morphed into the scene in real time with very low latency, with what seemed like full range of motion. Hand turning was mapped, clinching, grabbing, pointing. Being able to interact with virtual objects with your actual hands instead of using props is another giant leap forward in VR technology. Amongst the obvious use cases for this, that being like pushing buttons to activate animation triggers, turning steering wheels, opening doors, etc. You can also use point and move technology to teleport you quickly around any VR scene. You basically just point your finger where you want to go, clinch your hand, and it just moves you to that point. It's absolutely phenomenal. And the XTAL has a built-in microphone as well for voice-activated commands. No need anymore to chew on with third-party separate mics, notorious for not working when you need them to. In the scenes we were working with, we had an Autodesk Red scene and an Unreal Engine 4 scene. We could just say to the XTAL, change environment.
Changing environment.
Close doors.
Closing all doors.
Close trunk.
Closing trunk.
And the software would then initiate a behavioral trigger which activates a variant in the scene automatically. The car in Vred would then instantly change colour, or the doors would open, And in the Unreal Engine 4 scene, you could say change the floor or change the walls, and then the material mapped to the floor and the walls would change automatically. It was absolute mental. Speaking from personal experience, trying to guide a new VR user through clumsy menus on a controller wand to try and make things happen in VR, that's another one of those immersion breaking experiences for them. So being able to just speak to activate workflows is another massive, huge selling point for the device. So what kind of hardware do you need to run something like this? Well, yeah, that's a thing. Look, this is for serious super users. This isn't for the home user, so nobody's going to be making any apologies for the hardware needed to power this. And to be fair, that's not really on Vrgineers. We are where we are with graphics technology. Even the most powerful graphics cards on the market today, they struggle to sustain the ideal 90Hz per eye to the Vive and the Rift in some situations. So going from 2.6 million pixels rendered per second up to 7.3 million, it's gonna need a lot more power behind it. There's just no getting away from it. The Nvidia branded walls though in the Vrgineers office strongly suggests that there's a partnership there, so I suspect things are happening behind the scenes to help optimize the tech both today and moving on into the future. But yeah, you're going to need the best of the best for this, mate. If you need to ask how much that's going to cost, then you're probably going to get quite the fright when you're told. But look, this is just a first impressions look at the XTAL. They're going to be sending me out a sample unit soon, so I'll be able to test it on the incoming 2080 Ti, as well as hopefully partnering up with some OEM system builders for recommended setups. So stay tuned for that. Get subbed if you're not already. But if you're looking for an answer to the original question, basically without performing a benchmark test myself, this will need the absolute top of the stack GPU and possibly multiples of those in one machine, and the same goes for the CPU, but I'll be able to advise further once I get one in-house and on the bench. So that's the mass majority of the facts and the figures out the way, and Vrgineers, they're absolutely mental passionate about VR, and I kind of get the feeling that the work's never really going to be done here. They're working on constant iterations, perpetual improvements. For example, obviously the physical size of the headset, which, don't get me wrong, it's not uncomfortable, but it's big. There's no getting away from that. It's big. That's something that they're actively working on. And in addition to already supporting Steam VR, ART and OptiTrack tracking systems to let you work in a VR space the size of a football field, they're also working on their own new tracking technology for the headset, which, me putting it way too simply, it uses magic to scan the surrounding area using cameras mounted from the headset itself. It uses contrast lighting and colours to pick up on the edges to accurately map the surrounding space without the need for physical base station tracking and tethered cables. So yeah, I've only got first impressions to go off, so I'm not really in any position to post anything titled a review yet, but I can articulate a few thoughts and opinions based off of those first impressions. And firstly, before I get into that, I want to extend a huge thank you to Marek and the team for their wonderful hospitality, and also for, well, just for working with me here, for recognising the value of a channel like mine and for the niche specialised audience that I've got, that being you lot. I'll not divulge my true thoughts on things like, 32-core CPUs being sent to nitwit gaming-focused tech channels and all that, but needless to say, my channel tends to go completely unnoticed, purely due to size. That's life, that's how it is. This YouTube business, it's a high school popularity contest, and I've got nothing but absolute massive respect for companies like VRG who recognise the value of you. That you guys are subbed to a CAD channel because you're incredibly driven, ambitious, smart, educated and professional, even if you think you're not. Even if you're a student still wondering what your purpose is in life, if you've subbed to a channel like mine, that says a lot about you and where you want to be headed in life. And if you're not already, well, you've got a pretty good chance of at some point working for a company who will have an interest in these technologies, or perhaps even start your own company at some point. Anyway, back to the XTAL. Honestly, I went into this not really knowing what to expect, but I thought that this was going to be 100% all about that 5K resolution. But looking back now on the overall experience, honestly for me, above all else, it was the company themselves, their professionalism, their passion for perfection, their knowledge of the industry, and their absolute determined drive to try and compete against the absolute giants like Valve, Oculus, Samsung, and all the other companies who've frankly got more receptionists and janitors than the entire employee roster of Vrgineers. It's incredible what they've done. But with regards to the hardware itself, right, it was actually the hand tracking and the voice activation workflows that grabbed me the most. You can have your Infinity Retina pixel perfect vision going on all day long, but if the user has to literally have their hand held and their fingers moved onto buttons on the controller wands to get menus to appear and to figure things out, if you've got to physically remove the headset from somebody and put it back on to do things for them in the VR space, It's a complete deal breaker, mate. So this natural organic method of interaction with VR breaks more barriers to success than the Clarity of Vision ever could. But as it goes, it just so happens that this is absolutely magnificent as well. VR in 5K, man, it is breathtaking. Get me VR in 5K, real-time ray trace, and that's it, I'm done. I'll sell me kidneys for that and I'll never leave the house. Seriously, I mean, put it this way, it was immediately obvious why this has been adopted so swiftly by the automotive players. Like, oftentimes, a car, like, when it goes through its mid-life cycle impulse, like a refresh, that can consist of simply a change of stitching on the steering wheel or a door panel, for example, or a slightly different brushed aluminium finish on the dash surrounds. With the XTAL, you can see those details really, really clearly, whereas with like the Vive or the Rift, those smaller, finer details, they tend to blur across a single pixel, they'll wash out through the Fresnel ringed lenses. Being able to evaluate those small design options without the need to build physical prototypes can cover the costs of implementation in a heartbeat. So what I did is I brought in a dataset from one of my clients. It was a subsea remotely operated vehicle which I've viewed loads of times through the Vive. It's worked, but the XTAL opened up a whole new world of design checking in an industry which honestly they don't care about appearances and cosmetics and aesthetics. The XTAL will let you quite literally maneuver your head into a crowded area to visually check for clashing, access issues, maintenance considerations, things that you can check in CAD in 2D, but there's no substitute for actually being there and sticking your head into an area. You can get your hands into an area which a technician's going to need to. Can someone reach a cable or an access point from a certain position? The hand tracking alongside the pixel sharp vision here is an absolute game changer. But yeah, if you've never used VR before and you don't know what the primary issues are, you can see that on screen right now. What you're seeing here is the Vive and the Oculus Rift lens, and as you can see, the ringed Fresnel glass beginning to blur at the edges. I'm not going to beat down on it though. I own a Vive and I absolutely adore it, but I know it very well. I know how to position it perfectly for me. Put it on someone else though, and there's a good chance that they're seeing this. Now look at the OLED scene through the XTAL lens. Bear in mind this is recorded through an awful GoPro, but all that is gone. There's no blur, there's no screen door effect, there's no haze or artifacts. You could argue it's a problem solved which didn't need to be there in the first place, but hey, what do I know about that? I'll leave that to Vrgineers to fight and win that battle. But yeah, bearing in mind this isn't a review, I'm kind of rattling my brain here to try and think of any negative things to balance this out, because it's clearly one-sided. But the hand tracking, which of course I've said is one of my main takeaways from this, you do lose that haptic vibration feedback by not having a controller, but that's a trade-off that I'll be happy to take, because with hand tracking you can push buttons, you can push virtual menus, that kind of thing, so it's far better than having that vibration feedback. And whilst the XTAL certainly isn't a prototype, it still will be rapidly evolving over time, with this being something joining the party soon. This is a prototype of a new internal tracking matrix which is going to give the XTAL full integrated support for the Steam VR Lighthouse 2.0 base stations. Obviously this is going to all be integrated into and behind the fascia, but for now it's working just fine on the original base stations, or you can use the Vive wireless adapter for initial compatibility with the 2.0 stations. And finally, the elephant in the room, yeah, the cost. You might be surprised to hear that. Well, I didn't ask them intentionally. What became apparent pretty quickly was that if you're concerned about the cost, then basically this isn't for you. If your margins are so tight that a single hardware purchase could cripple your bottom line, this unfortunately isn't for you. If you Google around, you'll find numbers being quoted, but prices change and I can't change the video once it goes live. So if your company's interested in this, you can make contact with Vrgineers through their website. But what I can tell you is that they offer like a lease service, which sounds like a much more wise move given how fast the technology is evolving. Right, I was going to wrap it up there, but you see, here's the thing. Us YouTubers, we try and predict the responses we'll get from viewers. We try and predict what you're thinking and then cover it in the content. Obviously, that's kind of the point, but sometimes, well, I'm trying to keep this professional, but I looked at a few videos and articles already done on the XTAL and read the comment stream, and wow. Right, here goes. So, comment 1. Update me once you've made the second generation version that's lightweight, $400, and when it has at least 10 games titles worth playing, experiencing. Well mate, that update won't ever happen. That's like saying to Rolex, update me when you've made a watch that's $100 and available over the counter at my nearest gas station. You're not their market, and at no point have they ever suggested that you might be. It doesn't have tracking built in and it's $6,000. This product is a complete joke. It doesn't even have bloody headphones. This is more than a joke, it's a complete con. They're running a con. Well, mate, it does have tracking built in, actually. It supports multiple tracking systems because it's intended for a massively varied enterprise market, from automotive through to pilot training, and it's got hand tracking built into the front fascia. But if you're concerned about it not having headphones and it being a big con, is JCB a big fat con for not having autopilot and Apple CarPlay in their diggers? No, because they're not selling diggers to people like you. Vrgineers aren't selling the XTAL to people like you. It's not personal, you're just not their market. 5120 by 1440 isn't that much. People running Vives and Rifts with super sampling are pretty much doing that resolution already. No, we're really not. The physical pixel limit of the display is the physical limit of the display. Sticking feathers up your butt doesn't make you a chicken. Think about it. If you have a VGA CRT monitor with an 800 by 600 native resolution, if drivers and ports allowed it, do you think upscaling content on that old display to 3840 by 2160 would give you the same wonderful viewing pleasure as a new native 4K panel? No. Come on, man, use your noodle. Alright, so looking around at all the remarks across all the other sources, it's pretty clear that an immediate knee-jerk response is induced of being offended because it's priced beyond your means and it doesn't have some of the features found on consumer devices. I'll refer you back to the JCB analogy, but look, they're not even trying to achieve home use. They're just not even thinking about that. Their entire operation is geared towards small-scale deployment into enterprise with a support structure to manage just that. But I do get it though, it's 5K VR. Gaming would be insanely good, but you know, Honda make a 1.6 litre V6 engine that revs to 15k RPM for Formula 1 cars, but you're not going to be buying that to drop into your Civic anytime soon because, you know, it's not made for you. So that's all, folks. Bottom line is that this will be expensive, but the fact is, it isn't too expensive for the people it's marketed towards. In fact, it's a very wise investment for the right business. Just remember, nobody's ever suggested that this has any intention of ever being sold into the home for the average or even the enthusiast gamer, so please don't judge it on that basis like those previous commenters. Might they work on a lower cost, home consumer focused unit in the future? Who knows? I didn't ask. This is a professional level channel after all. But finally, thanks again to Marek and the team. If you're interested in seeing more from the XTAL, get sub to TFI, because once I've got the unit in my own office, I'm going to be putting it through its paces and demonstrating it across a wider range of apps with a much better camera this time. But thanks for watching. Links are in the description below if you're interested in reaching out to Vrgineers, and I'll see you in the next one. Toodles!